I would start with Genesis, where God says, let us create mankind in our image and in our likeness, right? So mankind, that would be all inclusive, right? He could have said, let us create some of mankind in our image, in our likeness, but he said mankind, right? And then if we move forward, we know that there's one God and Father of all, who is above all, in all, and through all. One God and Father of all, right? So then how do we reconcile this with some of the scriptures where it seems like you need to do something to become a son of God or a child of God, right? How I view it is, it's never from God's perspective. God is always the Father of all. It is from our perspective. We have been enemies in our own minds towards God. So we don't know that he's our Father, but he's always the Father. And I believe where we become a child is not to him, it's to us. It's from our perspective. Does that make sense? So it isn't like we're going through life and I go my whole life and I just never realize I'm a son of God, and so God never accepts me as a son. Does that make sense? I don't believe it's like that. I believe from God's perspective, we are all his children, always, whether we know it or not. So as an example, we can use the prodigal son. We can use the prodigal son as an example of some mindsets, right? We have the mindset of the religious guy that loves to work. We have the mindset of you could say the earthly mindset, right? The world, the mindset of the world, and the mindset of the Father. And if we use that as an example, you could see how the different mindsets work out. When the prodigal son was lost in all his filth and dirt and the worst of his sin, he remembered he had a father. He always had a father, even when he had forgot he had a father. But it took him to remember he had a father to then go back to his father. But his father never forgot about his son. If I speak to people about God's love, they'll say yes, but he's also just, right? Kind of like with an angerness to it, as if justice is somehow opposed to his love. It's the opposite of love. When we find out, if we look deeper into scripture, God's justice is restoration. It's not casting off forever. God's justice is restoring, it's healing. And so I use my sons as an example, and I've used this example to try to like solidify it before about a father. So I have twin boys. And imagine at the hospital, the nurse gives me the two sons, which she did, and she was like, you're so blessed. Like, I bet you're gonna love these little boys. And I look at them and I tell the nurse, I say, well, I am loved, but I'm also just. And we'll see which one of these are my sons, if any of them, right? By the way they behave. It's like, that's weird, right? Wouldn't that be weird? We were like, no. But yet we project that onto God all the time. I mean, this Sunday, there's gonna be probably thousands of churches that are doing that. And we make him into this really like, is he our father or is he not? He either is or he is not. And that middle ground is so confusing. Well, he loves me. He might love you. Try. Come on, like join us. And he might love you too, but he might not, Or imagine if we take it even farther and I say, okay, now as my sons are growing, you come to visit me and they're 5 or 6 years old, and you come over and you're like, oh, let me see your boys. And I'm like, yeah, Isaiah, come here. And you see me with him and I'm so loving and I'm so kind and I'm encouraging, and you could tell like my gentleness with him. And you're like, wow, you must love your son so much. And then you hear in another room like screaming and torture and this hellish pain. And you're like, what is that? And I'm like, oh, that's the other kid that my wife gave birth to. I'm holding him in this room in this darkness and torturing him because he didn't do some things I wanted him to do. That would be insanity if a human were to do that. But we are so free and so easy with projecting that onto God. We've fallen so far. We've fallen so far that we call good evil and evil good. just the other day, I was doing some studying, and I was watching, he was actually a priest, but I was watching him talk about universal salvation, and he was saying how evil it is. How evil it is to think that God would save everyone. You know, and I thought, like, wow, like he doesn't see it. He doesn't see that he's just projecting his own unforgiveness onto God and demanding that everyone else have the same level of unforgiveness, right? And project it onto God as well. But when we put it on a human, it's kind of easier to see, you know? So I believe he is the Father of all. Always has been the Father of all, always will be the Father of all, and it is something that happens in us that reveals that to us, but he doesn't need it to be revealed to him. He's always there.